and thank you for watching Office Pro TV, helping you learn wherever you go. I'm your host, Zach Memis, as we continue on with Excel 2016 Essentials. Right now, we're going to learn about proof, print, and page layout. And the person bringing us all that great information is the one, the only Vaughn Smith, right over here. Vaughn, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Yes, I like to put all those, the proof, print, and page layout. They just kind of
page layout.
Yeah, they just kind of roll off your tongue.
It does. It does. It does.
Yeah. So we're going to learn about proof, print, and page layout.
Good.
We're going to talk a little bit about the wonderful spell check, and we're going to get into the thesaurus. I always have to stop and actually say it because it's a hard word to say exactly. And so then we're going to also talk about our page layout when we get into our margins, our orientations, and the different ways that we can do our page breaks and all that kind of fun stuff. So let's hop right on down. So we have our file with page layout.xlsx. That's another hard one to say as well. We're back with our Christmas cats. All right, so if this looks very much like our Christmas cats example file, it pretty much is. But I went ahead and added a few more addresses in there to be able to demonstrate some of the concepts that we're going to be talking about. All right, so proofing, right? Spell check. You have spell checks in pretty much all of your programs. It's always good to go ahead and run a spell check on this because you don't have as many of the default red squigglies and things like that you have in Word. Because, well, if you think about it, this is a spreadsheet program. This is things that you're going to put more like numbers and addresses and all that kind of information that maybe a spell check is actually going to do more than it needs to where I have Fuego and Bishop. Actually, let me go ahead and move over here. And it's going to go ahead and check those. So yes, always good to do a spell check, but sometimes the information that you have in Excel is not necessarily going to lend itself for a very easy spell check. So proofing over spell checking might be something you need to always look at. But hey, why don't we go ahead and run one just for fun? So we're going to go over to our review tab right here. We come over to our spelling over on the left-hand side. So if I click on that, it brings up, all right, well, what am I looking at? And just to show you, over here, I have in the notes, I have sales were low due to the holiday. Well, that really should be sales. We're not talking about Sal, the pizza maker, where we really want to actually have that. So, and this is again where you have to determine, was that supposed to be Sal's pizza place and I forgot the apostrophe? Or was that supposed to be sales or salts? Okay, it's going to do the spell check, but sometimes it's not even going to give you the suggestions that are even close to what you want it to be or what you intended. So always doing a good look over. But in this case, I do want to change Sal's to sales, which is the first suggestion. And so you have some buttons over here of change all, autocorrect, which is getting into our autocorrect options. But in this sense, I only want to change it right now. I don't want every instance of SALS to be changed to sales. So I'm going to click on change, and then we're going to keep on going. Now this is one, okay, we have Puma. Now that is the correct spelling of Puma, the way that we decided to spell her name. So it's P-O-O-M-A. And this is one of those where I don't want it to be changed. I don't want any of the suggestions in here. It's not the Potomac. So I can ignore it once or I can ignore it all because maybe Puma's all through this particular worksheet. So this is where you have to choose. There is another option that you could do with add to dictionary. Adding to the dictionary would be where I want you to stop seeing that Puma is spelled wrong and keep it in your memory to say, yes, this is how we spell Puma, or this is how we spell Fuego, or what have you. So adding to the dictionary, because maybe IT Pro TV, we're going to have that throughout all of our spreadsheets. Stop recognizing it, add to the dictionary, and then it will not check it next time and say, oh, no, we're good. That's how you spell IT Pro TV. Well, unless you spelled it wrong again, then that's another story. So we're going to ignore. Now, this is another where the Stitcher, and just to show you this, little note, there actually is a machinery called the Stitcher trimmer. It's in mailing and printing, and at my husband's print shop, that's where they have it. So that is actually not a misspelled word. That is the stitcher trimmer. So sometimes it thinks it's wrong, so it's like, that's not what it is. It is. So we're going to go ahead and ignore that as well. And then we get this warning of like, hey, so I'm at the end of this document. Do you want to start from the beginning? Because my cursor, or it's not my cursor, sorry, my active cell was like somewhere down in here. So I do want to go ahead and check from the beginning. And then it's going to go back to Puma again. That's all right. We'll go ahead and ignore that. And then we'll ignore, oh, here, tolls. It's not tolls. It's totals. So I go ahead and choose that, and it's not toils. So I have to find the suggestion. Again, I spell things so wrong sometimes that like it's not even going to come close to giving me the right suggestion. So I will take my totals and I will change it. And weekly, that's another one. Oh, good. I'm glad that I'm running the spell check. So it's supposed to be changing to that. And now it says, great, you're done, good to go, thank you. I click OK, and there I go. But, Zach, I'm sure you understand, like, it's always good to do a good proofread through things every once in a while, right?
Oh, yeah, you got to have a proofreader.
Yeah. And sometimes I've actually had where proofreaders, they read it upside down. So they take the page and they turn it upside down and read it this way, because that way they're not actually reading the sentences, because we've seen those. I've seen them on Facebook. It's like, if you can read this, then you can understand it. Like, it's all jumbled and messed up, but our brain can read it because we're reading it like sentences and text.
Right.
So they turn it upside down, and that way they can start to kind of actually look at the text as like the letters.
Wow, that's cool.
I don't know if I could do that.
I don't think I would do that, but that's cool.
Or maybe you could just like, stand on your head, and then read upside.
That'd be all right.
Yeah, then I'd start passing out and everything. Yeah. Anyways, different ways to proof your document, or in this case, your spreadsheet, because right here you could see that Bishop had to walk in production. Well, walk is a real word, and it's spelled right, but he's not making, stir fry. He's working in production. So we need to make sure that we come in here and actually come up into our formula bar and change that to work. And there we go. Make sure you always proof. It's very important. And I always have multiple people proof your documents. If it's something that's really important, like going to, say, the CEO meeting, you want to make sure things are spelled properly and everything is in its right place.
And I like the little image of the cat there. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, like, it's a little meow.
Yeah, it's nice. Very good.
It's a Christmas cat, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the thesaurus. Yes. The thesaurus. The thesaurus is what is a thesaurus there, Zach?
Well, it's going to tell you different words that might be similar to the word you're trying to use, and so you're not so redundant, and you don't use the same word over and over again.
The redundant departmency.
Yeah, the Department of Redundancy Department, so you can avoid that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I need to have it say it a little bit different for me. So this is where you can use the thesaurus. Yeah, so maybe I would like to have this particular word, maybe a sales word low. Maybe I want another word for low. So I will select the word, and now I will come up on my review tab to the thesaurus, and I will click on here to where, well, what is low? Like little, stumpy?
Stumpy.
Yeah, sales word stumpy.
Sales word stumpy.
But now the thing is, now this is going to be a little strange thing that's going to happen, and I checked this because I'm like, why isn't this working? Notice I have a word selected within a cell. So I double-clicked in my cell. I selected the word. I came over in the source, and it has given me the different words, but it won't allow me to scroll down. There is a scroll right here, but it's not letting me go down. And it kind of threw me off. I'm like, why is it not working? So because I do work in a virtual machine on my Mac computer, so I switched over to my Mac, fired up Excel, did the same thing. I'm like, oh, it works just fine. It scrolls. I'm like, So I'm hypothesizing that it could be a virtual machine, like it's not allowing me to do this in a selected word within a cell. So this might be a me thing, to where my computer is not wanting it to work this way, because virtual machines can get a little wonky here and there. But to demonstrate this whole idea of where you would want to change the word low, I have created it to where I can at least show you the results from selecting the cell, okay? Not selecting the words within the cell. All right, so let's try this again. So I will select the cell. We'll come over here to that button, and we have this yes. I can't even say it. Now you see my scroll's working.
Yeah.
Everything's working fine because I had the cell selected, not the word. Again, I can't tell you exactly why mine's not doing that. Now, if yours is doing that too, then maybe it's just an actual feature of Excel 2016 on a Windows environment, and it's not my virtual machine.
It's not just a VM.
Yeah, I'm giving all those asterisks of like, this could be it. But while I have the cell selected of the word low, and I did want to put in Stumpy in there.
Yeah, sales were Stumpy.
Don't click the word. Because as soon as you click the word, it then puts that as the word that it's going to look in the thesaurus. And it throws me off every time in every office environment. Because I'm like, okay, replace it with Stubby. No, you don't want to replace it with Stubby. Well, you do want to replace it with Stubby, but you have to come over here to the drop down next to the word, then choose insert, or you can right click. Yeah. So because to me it's like intuitive to just click it and it puts it in. Doesn't work that way.
Nope.
So we're going to insert it, and now you can see that low has been changed for Stumpy. And there
Stumpy.
we go. Okay. Perfect. So that's where we can use our thesaurus. We're also going to do, I'd like to go ahead and show you the smart lookup because that's kind of fun. This is part of the intelligent services that is turned on in Excel for me. This is something that you can turn on or off if you go into the file and you go into options to where right down at the bottom of the general there is Office Intelligent Services. This is the thing that will automatically add alternate text to your images. And in this sense, go ahead and let you do the smart lookup. And there's more about the intelligent services that you can click on, and it'll actually take you out to the website to go ahead and show you what it does. It is our computers and Office just being smart for us. That's the PowerPoint designer, which is so cool in there, and then the editor in Word, and then it does have the smart lookup throughout all of our products.
That's wonderful.
So we have here, we'll go ahead and close it. If I wanted to look up Bishop, like what's all about Bishop, and I click smart lookup, you do have to be connected to the internet too. So, and notice it shows like, all right, well let's go ahead and define what is a bishop, and then it gives you some synonyms, and then it goes out, oh, look at Wikipedia. Okay, Don Bishop. He's a cornerback. Okay, that's great. And then it comes down, here's some images, here's some web searches. So it's kind of cool that it's going to go out and just kind of give you some references by scanning the Oracle. They've consulted the Oracle to go ahead and give you some different things of what a bishop might mean. Now, to me, this is where I'm like, well, why aren't you pulling up Ben Bishop from the Tampa Bay Lightning? But that's because that's what the cat is named after. He's named after the goalie, who is now not with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But that's okay. It's, you know.
But he was.
He was, and he was my favorite, number 30. Okay, so, but anyways, smart lookup can be kind of fun, but you do have to have those intelligence services to be able to use them. All right, now once I've done proofing my document, a lot of times what you're going to get ready to do after this is print it. And this is where everybody struggles of like, why can't I get everything on the page? And it's like doing all these weird breaks and so on and so forth. Hopefully I'm going to try to alleviate some of that pain for you and be able to make it a little easier. We're going to go into print preview now, which I can do a Control P on my keyboard to get there. But we can also come into File and go to Print, and it takes me into Print Preview. Now over here you can see that it's cutting off part of like the little kitty, right? The little kitty cat's not on here. And I have a second page. I know I have a second page because down here at the bottom it says page 1 of 2. If I click the little button to the right, notice it's just got that last column over there.
Oh, I hate that when it does that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of annoying.
Please help us fix it.
I will.
Okay.
So we have here the settings. Let's start at on the left-hand side of what I can do to change this in our settings. Well, first of all, printing is only going to print the active sheet by default. Like I didn't select anything, and it's not printing the whole workbook. Let's go back over here to notice that we do have multiple worksheets within this workbook. We have weekly sales, chart data, or sales chart, and addresses. And you're like, how'd you get those names in there? How did you make them a different color? It's in the next episode. So, so we have those different ones, but it's not going to print your workbook out unless you tell it to. So those are your different options. I'm doing Control P of print what? Active sheet, the entire workbook. If I choose entire workbook, notice that my page numbers down there go from 1 of 2 to 1 of 9.
Wow.
Where it's going to start changing all, and now the chart fits on there perfectly. But then you get into the addresses, and it's like half of them are over here, and then there's the other half, and it's like, where are we? This is really confusing. So just know that we're going to stick with active sheets for right now, and then we can also talk about printing a selection, because if I want the whole sheet to be printed, that's great. What if I only wanted part of the sheet to be printed? Let's come back over here, because maybe I only want to have Monday and Tuesday's sales of our 4 sales representatives. So if I select something first, come over to File, and come over to Print, or Control P, it's like, well, that's not changing anything. You got to tell it. You got to come down into here and say Print Selection. You got to have a selection first.
Okay.
So we go ahead and choose that, and now you can see that this is printing just that selection that I've made. And all the settings that we are going to go over next will be associated with, is it just the active worksheet, is it just the selection, and so on and so forth. Now I just want to show you behind my head, there are 2 tiny little buttons that I was like, whoa, what happened?
Print selection, maybe?
Yes, look at that. You found it.
Yep.
Yes, it's still set on print selection, so it kind of freaked me out too. I was like, oh, no. Active sheet. There you go. So if you wanted to see it a little bit more, it's just a zoom because it's hard to see from the back of that. But I'm going to keep it zoomed out for us. But I just wanted to point that out. And there's another button right here. This is where we're going to get into show margins. When we change over to modifying our margins, we can click that button. I can show you where you can drag them rather than type them in. Okay, so just wanted to point that out. But now you can bring me back up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, let's start with this is portrait versus
Landscape.
I can get more stuff across if I just printed it this way rather than this way.
That's
so
right.
maybe that would actually fit all my information on here. So let's try that. And you can do it all right from Print Preview. Cool.
Very
Change
nice.
my orientation from portrait to landscape. Oh, it's gotten most of it. Oh man, but it cut off just that tiny little bit.
It's a little bit there.
Right?
Yep.
You know, so we got to change that a little bit. This is probably one of my favorite parts is scaling. Okay. And I'm glad that they actually put this here in these selections because they used to kind of hide it, if you want to say, like down in the page setup, which is right down there, by the way, the little link to the page setup dialog box. This is the way the page, this has been around forever, like way back in older versions of Excel.
In the olden days.
Yes, and so we had to come over into these different ones in here to change all of the stuff, and you'd have to go into the sheet where's the scale? So, oh, it's right there. Scaling, you'd have to kind of like adjust it and see what's going to happen, and I don't know how to fit it. This has gotten so much easier by, in my scaling options, I could fit all the columns on one page. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want to do. Or maybe I want to fit all the rows if I had other types of information. Fit everything onto one page. Now this it might make it so small that you can barely read it.
Yeah, big magnifying glass.
But at least it goes ahead and gives you that scale option. So if I chose fit all columns, because I just need that little bit of the cat left over to fit, there we go. Scaling is so much easier, and it's great that it goes ahead and gives you those options right down on the bottom of these drop downs. So loving that.
Yep.
Fantastic. So a few other things that you can change with your page layout, your margins. Margins is where, maybe if I made the margins a little less, a little bit more, and first of all, what are the margins? The margins are the white areas around the edges of your printed page. and you can change that. And maybe you have certain specifications where you always have to have 1-inch margins all around on your page. Now I'm thinking more like Word, but maybe you have special paper, maybe you have letterhead paper that you're going to be printing this out, and you need to make sure that you have a 2-inch clearance on that top margin so you don't print over the stationery or the letterheads that you have already pre-printed. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why you want to modify your margins to fit more, fit less, or do your letterhead. So we got here with our margins. Right now it's on our normal, which is our 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch all around, but then your left and right are 0.7, and your headers, okay, then I could go ahead and do my wide margins and see where it's going to give more of that white space. But because I have my my scaling on there, it's shrinking everything down for all the columns, I'm not going to get an adjustment of the content going on or off onto the next page. So just keep that in mind that I did the scale first and then the margin. If you're doing the margins before the scale, it might adjust things a little bit differently. But that 2-inch custom header or custom margin, sorry, it's not a header. I can come into the custom margins and then I could specify that I need a 2-inch margin on the top, and that's where I need it to be. And then I click OK and notice that it drops everything down to that 2-inch mark, which is pretty fantastic. So there's a lot of things that you can do right from within your print preview dialog box to go ahead and change the different variations. Now remember that button behind my head that I was talking about, like, oh, well, what about if I wanted to just kind of visually change the margins? Maybe the numerical values aren't really doing anything for me. Well, if you click this button down here, it's going to show you where those margins live. Wow. And that's where you could drag them left and right or up and down to be able to kind of visually fit the information on your page. Now, with this stuff, we don't have a lot going on in here. But think about if you had, 60,000 rows or just a couple that are just kind of hanging off on the next page, you could adjust the margins here. Now, why do they have like 2 of them right down here? Because you do need to accommodate for headers and footers, which we will be getting into in just a little bit. But notice when I hover over these lines, let's go back up to this top one. You get a line with 2 pointed arrows on there. I could take this and drag this up and then just change this visually to where I want my margins to go. Again, remember I have that scale, that's why it's adjusting. Okay, that doesn't happen automatically if you don't have that scale on. So making my margins by dragging those all from within the print preview dialog box. Or I guess this is really the backstage view still. So the dialog box would be, if I scroll down, would be the page setup. And when I click on page setup, I can change all of those. Because now if I look at my margins, okay, it's 1.87 and 1.76. Like, that's just from where I dragged everything around. And you can change your center on the page, which is kind of a big thing for me. I kind of like to have things like vertically centered a lot of times. So if I choose that vertically centered, notice that it's going to jump down into the vertical centering of the page, and that where my margins, really the left and right margins, are going to be the biggest part that I need to worry about. All right, so headers and footers. We can still do this from this print preview and this backstage view, but you just don't have a drop down for it. But you do have that dialog box in the page setup to where we can come into our header and footer. Now, what are headers and footers? They're things that go on the top of the page and the things that go on the bottom of the page, and they will repeat on every printed page. So if I had 6 pages, it's going to print on all 6 of those pages. The one thing from doing it from this particular dialog box is you don't really see it until you click OK. So you kind of have to do it, click OK if you want to preview it right here, then come back into the dialog box and keep on going. Now with headers and footers, you have 3 specific areas. You have the left, the center, and the right. In Word, we talked about these with tab stops and everything, but since we're not in Word, you're like, I don't care what's in Word. Well, I mean, not that you don't care, but I'm just trying to correlate to something you might have already done. You don't have to worry about tab stops here because they actually compartmentalize it for you. Watch. Maybe I want to have on my header, I clicked on the custom header button. I would like to have my name, the date, and the file name, because that's what I need to have. And this is something that maybe in your particular organization, it's like you always need to put the file path in there. You always need to put the date when you're printing on something, because this is just like for the record that you need to know, that anybody that sees this needs to know when it was done and where it came from. Luckily, you don't have to type that out, because those are things like properties of either the document or just the day that happens. So if I have my flashing cursor over here on the left, see, no tab stops, I can just type in Von Smith, and I will click in the center. I want the date, but I want it to change when the date changes. If this was for tomorrow, then it would change there. Notice you do have some buttons across the top of what I can choose to put in there. So you click your cursor in the section that you want it to be in, and then you can click in, insert date, insert time, insert the file path, ooh, cool, file name, sheet name, all sorts of neat things that I could go ahead and do. I'm going to choose insert date. It doesn't say the date, it's just putting it in that special code that it knows to pull whatever the date is right now. I go to the right. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a flashing cursor because it is going to be right justified. Let's put in that file path, and we click OK. And you can see from the page setup that that is kind of what it's kind of like moving all together. That's okay. Click OK here, and then let's scroll out. Oh, see, it does come into the right sections. It's not going to like overlap itself. It was just in that particular dialog box that it wasn't able to see everything. So awesome, we can put that to the top. Let's go back down to that footer, come back into our page setup. We go over to headers and footers. In this sense, I only want the page numbers. I don't want to put anything else special. I don't need to occupy the 3 spaces. Notice that in both the header and the footer, there's a drop down. And in this drop down, it can choose, well, what do you want to put in there? And it's got some ones that, like, see, there's page layout, that's the file name. There's the file path. Oh, weekly sales, page 1. So it's giving you some default ones that maybe you're like, oh, that's exactly what I need. I need the username, what page I'm on, and the date. So you could choose it from the drop down. You don't always have to go into the custom if you wanted to. And so, for example, on this one, I would like to just do page 1 of, and then however many they have. And I click that, drop that down, click OK. Boop, there it is. It's right on down there that I have page 1 of 1. Now, I only have one page, so that's all I got. But if you had more, then it would go ahead and print on every single printed page.
Fantastic.
So, very nice.
Yes.
Now, those are all the things that we can do from the print preview dialog box or backstage view. I keep saying dialog box, but the page setup is the dialog box. But there's some other things that I do want to show you with the page layout that you can do from within the page layout view. And then we also have the really cool page break view. But I know you're giving me that signal of, hey, it's getting time to where we need to wrap up part 1. So you know what? We will come back with a part 2. So
awesome. Well, Excel 2016 Essentials, Proof Print Page Layout Part 1. There'll be a Part 2. Make sure you watch that, and make sure you watch every single video in the Excel 2016 Essentials library. You'll be very glad you did. Thanks, Vaughn. Great job. And thank you for watching Office Pro TV. Remember, a good Office Pro is always learning. I'm Zach Memis.
And I'm Vaughn Smith.
And we'll see you very soon.